Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk, a new series of candid conversations covering the issues facing freelance professionals today. I'm Tom Rizzo, your host, Managing Director and founder of Plectrum Advisors, an investment advisory firm based in Los Angeles. On each episode of Let's Talk, I'll be speaking with some of the most plugged-in experts to help you and me make sense of today's changing environment and to help you be smarter about how to approach work and life. So let's get started. Today's guest on Let's Talk is Amy Northard, founder and partner at Accountants for Creatives, a CPA firm unlike any other I've known. Amy and her amazing team help freelancers and creative business owners all over the U.S. navigate taxes and set up bookkeeping systems so that they can get back to doing what they love. In addition to being super competent and knowledgeable about all things relating to your taxes, Amy is also very personable and engaging, which makes the experience of interacting with her and her fantastic firm an unusually pleasant and helpful experience. As she likes to say, working with her firm is like talking to one of your good friends who also happens to be really good at accounting. She's a certified public accountant with nearly a decade of experience in public accounting, and she earned her undergrad degree from Indiana University at the Kelley School of Business. Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk. Today, I'm super excited to speak with our guest, Amy Northard. You know, we're always looking for people who do things differently and better, and Amy's certainly someone who fits that description. Amy's built an accounting firm that focuses on creative people, from freelance professionals like many of you, to those who started or built businesses based on a unique idea or insight. Amy and I both serve clients who are primarily freelancers. Amy calls them creatives. And we both hope to help clients navigate all the issues around finance and life. Amy and her firm have a unique perspective and approach to the accounting side of keeping your financial ducks in a row. In addition to being super competent and knowledgeable about all things relating to your taxes, Amy is also very personable and engaging, which makes the experience of interacting with her and her fantastic firm an unusually pleasant and helpful experience. I'd like to read a little something from her website to give you a little bit of a flavor. And this is Amy speaking. She says, "I'm not your typical accountant. I spent some time working at a traditional CPA firm and realized it was not for me. I wanted to work with clients and teammates who inspired me on a daily basis and made me feel excited for Mondays. Now I get to teach creative business owners all about the tax and accounting side of the business, so they don't feel like it's some big unknown stressful thing hanging over them all the time. I also love taking taxes and bookkeeping off of your plate so you can focus on the fun parts of owning a business." Amy's a certified public accountant with nearly a decade of experience in public accounting, and she earned her undergrad degree from Indiana University at the Kelley School of Business. So Amy, welcome. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. In dealing with my clients and in trying to improve their financial health and their planning and helping them make their financial security a priority in their lives, frequently we are also speaking with their CPA or accountant in terms of coordinating such things as pension contributions to a SEP IRA if they have an S Corp or a C Corp, or how do we carve out the best possible plan to fund their IRAs, and which kind of IRA should we have, and how does that affect our tax situation? And then there's always the question when they get to the end of the year of, oh my goodness, have I paid enough in, and how do I calculate that, and all the freakouts that go with dealing with issues that are really not top of mind to most creative people, but they realize that it's important that they pay attention to these things. So we'd like to talk to you today about all of those things and see how you handle them and how you recommend our clients deal with them in a way that serves them the best. So first of all, let's talk about your firm a little bit. You have a rather unique a demographic of people that you serve. Can you speak a little bit about how you came to focus on creative and freelance people?
Yeah, so I've always been creative. I have, I started a food blog in college as like my creative outlet while I was taking accounting classes, and I knit and, always just loved creative activities. So that's always kind of been in the background and my way for a creative outlet while I'm doing some more of the like numbers based work, either through school or now through my day-to-day work. So that's kind of where my love for creatives happened. I was working at the CPA firm that you mentioned in the intro, and not a lot of creative people, not a lot of inspiring clients. And so it just kind of took away, there wasn't much excitement when it came to doing the work. So I was looking for a way out. How can I be happy with what I'm doing, not totally trash my CPA license that I just worked really hard for, and still do accounting work that I enjoyed? And so that's where I came up with the idea of specializing in people that I could like follow on social media and interact with and really be inspired by the creative work that they were doing, and make me excited to help them grow their business and be more confident in the numbers side of running that.
Fascinating. Well, it's these are your clients are similar to the clients that I have in my firm, and the people that we help. They are primarily freelancers, and specifically they're musicians, studio musicians or performing musicians, and they have a unique set of needs in terms of handling finance and money and knowing how to understand that. How do you see what are some of the unique questions that need to be answered or needs of this particular demographic?
I would say there's probably two main needs or questions. So one is, what can I deduct? Because a lot of things are different for artists and performers versus running maybe a brick and mortar shop. So maybe if you're having to go get hair and makeup done, can I deduct that? That's a common question if it's for a performance. So things like what can be deducted, but then also explaining more difficult topics to creatives so that it's not, your brain doesn't shut off. Because I've been there. I've sat in the accounting classes. Your brain kind of shuts off and you really have to force yourself to pay attention and synthesize the information. So that's one thing I enjoy, is taking these topics, making them a lot easier to understand and apply. And so that you get done with whatever, if you're reading a blog post or we're having a consulting call, you get done with it and you're like, oh, I made that way worse in my head than it was actually ended up being. And they can, apply that to their business and move on.
Yeah. How do you help, or what advice do you have for people who may have income coming from many different places, some of it W-2 income, some of it independent contractor, which we call 1099 income. And one of the challenges this group has is trying to ascertain whether they've had enough withholding going on during the year, and then if they haven't, how you calculate how much they should be contributing to their estimated taxes so that they're in good shape by the end of the year. How do you help people with that in that situation?
Well, one common thing I see is that those W-2 earnings, they feel like they're through your freelance business because it could be very similar to what you're doing when you freelance, and clients will have that deposited to their business bank account. So the first thing I would say is make sure that any W-2 income that's going to have taxes already taken out, make sure that goes to your personal checking account, and then set up a second checking account just for all the freelance income and expenses. That way, money coming in here should have the appropriate taxes. So money coming into your personal account should have appropriate taxes taken out. And then the money coming into the business account has no taxes taken out. So you can, if you're not doing bookkeeping on a regular basis, you can kind of get an idea of the profit going into that business bank account, and you can start to set aside money. There's two different kind of philosophies or just suggestions on setting aside money. You could do it like if you get $1,000, set aside 10 or 15%. If you, so that is kind of setting it aside from the top amount of money that you receive. And then the other idea would be to set aside money after you have deducted your expenses. You have to do your bookkeeping to be able to do the second option. So, I would do one way or the other, put that money into a savings account so that it's ready for you when you are ready to save or send in your tax payments. But setting aside something and having kind of a strategy behind it is really helpful.
So do you, I like this idea of separate accounts so that it's just easier to see what the amount is that you're going to base the percentage that you're going to have to pay in tax.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, very few people are getting paper statements anymore. Everything is usually online, so it's pretty easy to take a look at the end of a month or at the end of a quarter and say, where do we stand, and then make that calculation.
Yeah, for sure. And then you don't risk double reporting your income if you're sending your money or your numbers to an accountant and you do have it all going to the same place. You have to remember to remove the W-2 deposits. So it's just less that you have to keep track of.
Yeah. I think one of the things I hear from my clients, and this is something that you and I spoke about in our preparation call the other day, is people have a lot of questions about when they should take certain actions. When is the right time to incorporate? When should I be paying most of my taxes? When should I make my decision to make my either pension contribution or IRA contribution, et cetera? Can you speak a little bit to that about how you can figure out when is the appropriate time to make these changes?
So, if you're looking at just making incorporating, if you just become like an LLC, it's good to know that doesn't change anything tax-wise. In California specifically, it will just mean an extra $800 a year that you get to pay to the state for the LLC fee. But if you're making enough money, then an S corporation, which is kind of the second layer to that, if you're an LLC or a regular corporation, you can become an S corporation. And that does have some tax savings. So we won't go too deep into what S corporations are, but basically what you need to know is if you are making, I usually say if you're making at least $50,000 in profit, so that's after you've taken your expenses out, if you still have $50,000 left over, then it's a good time to start thinking about or reaching out to an accountant about becoming an S corporation. And there are significant tax savings when you do that, but you have to be making enough money for that percentage to be applied to. As far as the other timeline items, setting aside money on a regular basis is helpful. So if you want to do every month, you look at your statement and you say, okay, I got this many deposits. I'm going to move this amount over to my savings account. It's kind of like a muscle. The more you work it, the easier it gets to do that, because it's always going to be painful to take money out of your, big pot of money and send it off to someone. But if you can get in the habit of moving money into that savings account, at least it's kind of separated and you've already mentally taken it out of your spendable money, and you have it ready to go. So as far as a timeline on that, I would say at least quarterly is a good plan. But if you can get in the habit of moving money into savings monthly, that's great as well. And then the other items, I would say, if you aren't sure and it's a more detailed question, finding an accountant to help you or a financial advisor to kind of guide you on that and maybe give you a checklist, of timelines that you can put on your calendar or just be aware of is really helpful, because everyone's a little bit different. The state rules are all a little bit different. So having someone on your side to give you that advice is nice.
Yeah, I agree. I like recommending to clients that we do things on a monthly basis, primarily because they're usually paying bills on a monthly basis. So usually there's a day, whether it's the first or in the week of the first of the month, that they're handling all of their bills. It's a car payment, mortgage, or rent, your insurance payments, utility payments, health insurance payments, that kind of thing, so that they've got a list of things that they're prepared, that they know these are things that I'm going to have to pay. And if we include this tax payment on a monthly basis, it stops being a looming liability, and it's just part of, I got to make my car payment, I got to make my rent, and I got to make the tax payment too. And it stops being something that's outside of the ordinary cost of living, that kind of thing.
I love that.
So we like, I usually recommend that this in monthly, and we even go so far as to, when we're putting budgets together for people, is we put their tax liability as a monthly expense. So if you're paying, $10,000 or $12,000 a year in taxes, we say that, that's $1,000 a month in your monthly budget to come out of there, rather than saying at the end of the year, oh my gosh, I got to write a check for $10,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So can you, I don't want to get too specific here, but I would like to talk a little bit about the creation of a pension for individuals that's available when they form either an S Corp or a C Corp. And that's usually in the form of a SEP IRA. And there are so many advantages to creating the SEP, not the least of which is there are really no reporting requirements as there are with the 401ks and that kind of thing. Can you talk just in somewhat general terms about how the structure of a SEP would work for someone who's trying to make the decision to make the transition from being a Schedule C person who's just taking income and reporting a Schedule C to maybe creating the S Corp, and what the advantage of the SEP might be, and how that would work in terms of how much they could contribute and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so with an S Corp, you get a W-2. Part of your wages, part of your money is paid out to you as a W-2 on a salary. The other part you can take as transfers. So what's important to know is you can make a contribution to your SEP of 25% of your W-2 wages. And it gets kind of weird, because you want to keep your W-2 wages to a minimum, but also the higher they are, the more you can contribute. So that's a good thing to kind of work with and play with your accountant, your financial advisor. It's kind of a little puzzle to figure out how much cash do you have available for this, what's the tax savings, and how all those pieces fit together. But I really like this SEP because you have until you file your return to make the contribution. So you can wait till the very end of the year, get your taxes almost complete, and then you can weigh out those options of how much you want to contribute. And Then if you need more time, you can extend your return, and you have till the extended due date. So you'll still want to be setting aside money, or planning for the current year. So you kind of have to juggle both of setting aside money if you don't have the funds yet to make that contribution, but then also thinking about the current year you're in, and planning for that as well.
Great. We're in mid-November right now, and it's getting towards the end of calendar year. Are there some steps that you might recommend that people take, either in calculations or actual things that they ought to be doing at this time of year to help them prepare to maximize the benefit of taxation or pension contribution?
So the biggest thing I would say, if you have time now, or just make time before the end of the year, is to sit down and figure out what your numbers are. That's the biggest thing I see with creatives is it's just this stressful thing, and it's very easy to put off until the last minute, and you have to get your taxes filed, and then you sit down and you deal with it. But I think it would lessen a lot of anxiety and stress if you the more you face it head on. So if you haven't done your numbers for the year, sitting down and maybe just doing a simple spreadsheet of, here's how much money has come in, here's where it all went out, and here's what I'm left with. And that money that you're left with, setting aside 30, 35%, some cases maybe 40%, setting aside money for the taxes, but you won't know how much to set aside unless you're actually looking at your numbers regularly. So that's the thing I always recommend people at this point. Sit down, get a handle on what your numbers actually are, treat it like a business. A lot of freelancers don't feel like it's a business, but you are a business if you're getting 1099 income, so treat it that way. And then consider, a lot of people come to me at the end of the year and they say, how much money should I spend? And I don't think that's the right question. I come back to them with a question and I say, what do you need? Is your laptop hanging on the last straw and there's a good Black Friday deal? Go for it. Go ahead and spend some of your money and get you a laptop that will speed up your process. Or is there a new lens or a new piece of equipment or instrument that you need? Go ahead and buy it. And you can buy it before the end of the year, and it will reduce your taxes. But don't just go out there and spend your money to reduce your taxes because you're scared of them. That is one of the biggest things I see at the end of the year, and people trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question for myself and people that I help, primarily because the income is not consistent. Mm-hmm. There's not, if you had a corporate job, you would be getting a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks. And we do have clients that are in this vicinity. And those people in those situations don't have to deal with a level of stress that people who have an uncertain income consistency. And one of the issues that plagues most of the musicians here that we work with is that they get a royalty check on an annual basis that can be a significant sum, and it shows up once a year. And how do you think about a significant lump sum payment, and what should you do about it? That's a lot more challenging than getting your annual income chopped up into 52 little pieces that come to you, and there's withholding and there's a pension contribution and that kind of thing. So all the more reason, I'm just speaking a little bit to your point of when you get to this time of year, figure out what these numbers are, because for many of us, we really don't know. We really don't know. But, well, how have we done? It seems to be okay. There's some money in the checking account. I guess we made money this year, but it sure would be nice to quantify that, to say the number is this, even if it's coarse, even if it's off by 10%, at least is roughly this. Was it 50,000? Was it 500,000? Let's get a sense of where we are. Mm-hmm. So many of us are even fearful of knowing that number on both sides of it, of if it's low, of saying, oh my gosh, I didn't do as well as I thought it was. Or if it's bigger than what you thought, you say, oh my God, what's the tax implication going to be here? And then you bury your head back in the sand and say, I just don't want to know because it's going to stay.
Right.
So, it's common, it's just human nature. But I like your recommendation of reaching out at this time of year to your CPA and say, if you have the impulse to try to get your numbers together, but don't even know what that means, what numbers, what are you talking about? Reach out to your CPA and say, can you guide me a little bit? What do I need? And I hope I'm not speaking for you, but I would think you are happy to do that rather than at the last minute to try to unravel these things on March 1st, to at least let's get it together now so we can make some informed decisions.
Yeah. No accountant will be mad if you are trying to do better and make their job easier at tax time. So, and a lot of them will have resources. We're just getting ready to send out a free training to our clients to help them be able to do their bookkeeping better, because we know it's a lot to learn, and you're not bookkeepers as your main job. So a lot of you have not gone through any training or had any experience in it. And we're always happy to help.
What's the difference between bookkeeping and accounting?
Great question. So bookkeeping, I would say, is just kind of historical tracking of your numbers. So what has happened in the past, and let's quantify it, let's add it up, put all the expenses in a category. We use a bookkeeping software. Usually for us, it's QuickBooks, but there's a bunch out there, and that helps us to create reports. So that's kind of the basis of bookkeeping. And then accounting, what we use more of our CPA skills for, relates into like tax planning, and giving advice, looking at the numbers more analytically. So bookkeeping is just kind of record keeping. Accountants and accounting kind of takes those records and puts a story to them and helps you kind of plan for the future.
And can a firm like yours do both for a client? Can they do both the bookkeeping and the accounting?
Yeah, there's definitely firms that just do one or the other. We do have a team of bookkeepers who do the bookkeeping for our clients, and then a CPA reviews that so that we're getting a couple sets of eyes on the numbers before they go out to clients. And then we can also put a little bit more of a story or apply our accounting skills to the bookkeeping, to share things like profit margin and that kind of thing with our clients when we send those reports out.
And so if a client wanted you to take care of both the bookkeeping and the accounting, how would you interact with the client on the bookkeeping end of things? What would you need from them in order to do their bookkeeping?
So assuming maybe they've never done bookkeeping ever, we would set up a QuickBooks account for them. All they would really have to do is link their business bank accounts. And so like if you've ever used mint.com or anything like that, you just kind of sign in through a QuickBooks and it pulls the transactions in. And then we get read-only access set up for their bank account so that we can pull the bank statements every month and just double check that the balances that show in the bookkeeping software match to what is showing on the statement. And then of course we do the categories. So a lot of times we can figure out categories just based on our knowledge of the industry or doing a little Googling. And then if not, we send a few questions over to our clients. But that's really just connecting the accounts and then answering a few questions each month is really all that our clients have to do on the bookkeeping side once they engage us for that.
So current technology really makes this relatively painless for the client, is just give access and you're able to pull the information. The client doesn't have to send you information or send you their statements or that kind of thing. This can be set up in an automated way that makes it pretty painless for the client. And then you can, as the accountant or bookkeeper, you can be assured that you're getting accurate information to be able to then advise the client.
Yeah, and we don't have to wait, and it's good all around. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there are, this is kind of an unknown quantity in terms of clients saying, well, if I hire somebody to do bookkeeping, how am I going to do that? What am I going to have to send? Am I going to have to gather? I don't even know where these statements are. But it's nice that the current state of technology kind of bypasses all of that. Which is the way it used to be, I think, 25 years ago. I mean, you used to have to send things in, and so it's a relatively painless transaction, and it's something that can really serve the client if a professional is doing the bookkeeping. Now you can get a really good advice once the year is over, when you're speaking with the CPA. Now they have all of these numbers that you've asked people to gather, and now you can have a really productive conversation about what to do.
Yeah, and if you are working with a CPA firm that's doing your bookkeeping, they can keep an eye on your numbers. And if you are a good candidate for an S Corp election or something like that, they're seeing your numbers throughout the year, so they can be proactive and suggest things to you earlier, rather than getting just to your tax return filing, and some things are too late after the year's over.
Yeah. I'm going to look at my list of questions that I wanted to ask you here. Do you have any, outside of the things that we've already spoken about, advice for our audience who are on my network are primarily freelance studio musicians? Do you have any words of wisdom to help them maximize their financial situation?
We kind of already talked about putting your head in the sand, and how that does not serve you well. So I think, finding someone that can, if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself, you can walk alongside and learn about, the simplicity of just setting up a separate bank account for your business transactions, and doing, some simple tips for doing your bookkeeping. So if money stuff from your business stresses you out, make that a goal for this upcoming year to learn more about it, because the more you learn about it, the less stressful it will be. That's kind of been our whole approach the whole time I've ran this business, is the more I can educate, then the more people can understand how this stuff all works, instead of it always just being this big scary thing that they're afraid of. Everyone comes to me and they're like, I'm worried the IRS is going to come arrest me. That is a common worry, because I hear it a lot, and it doesn't happen, ever, rarely. And so the more you can get educated on this stuff, the less you can be scared of it, and focus on the part you love. Focus on your craft and getting better, or expanding that part. So that would be my piece of advice. I mean, the deductions and the specifics, that stuff is out there, what you can deduct. Don't be afraid of deductions. I hear from a lot of people, oh, I don't want to get audited. But if you are truly due a deduction, and it is a legitimate business expense and not a personal expense that you're trying to run through the business, you're entitled to those deductions. So don't be afraid that something is going to, make a red flag. For most cases, your income is going to be low enough on the IRS radar that they're not going to send someone out there to interrogate you about your expenses. They may ask for copies of receipts, but it's not as scary as I think a lot of people think.
Is it, you mentioned receipts, is it true that it is no longer necessary to keep paper copies of the receipts if you paid something with a credit card? Is the credit card statement a valid enough receipt?
So I think the threshold is like under $75. So if your expense was under 75, you don't have to have a receipt or documentation. It is a good idea to, for bookkeeping purposes, to kind of have all that stuff flow through your business checking or credit card. But then to your point, you don't have to have paper receipts, but it is a good idea to keep electronic receipts. So if you're out at a meal for business, like put the Dropbox app on your phone, snap a picture of it and save it to a folder with the date. You don't have to get super specific and have little category folders for every single category. Just have it in a place where if the IRS asks you for more documentation or copies of your receipts, then you can spend the time to go back and, print all those out and send them in. But I think a lot of people think they have to have paper copies of everything, and that's not the case anymore. A lot of times those don't hold up, especially like if you leave a receipt in your car and it fades, it's no good. So having that digital copy is, in a lot of times, better.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. We talked a little bit about forming corporations at a certain point after a consultation with your CPA about your situation. Let's talk a little bit specifics of if you form a corporation. You will file actually 2 tax returns if you form a corporation, one for the corp and one personally. You want to talk a little bit about that and the dates that they're due and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the corporations are due March 15th, which is a good thing to have in your brain because it's a month earlier than personal returns. You can still file extensions for business returns. So if you do get caught off guard or maybe your bookkeeping's not done in time, you can file an extension, and then that extension is 1 month before your personal. Like if you also file your personal extension, the extended business return date is September 15th. So just keep those in mind. It's just basically a month earlier. Having the separate return, so if you are an S corporation, is considered a flow-through entity. And all that means is that it flows through. So instead of the business paying tax on it, the profit that your business generated gets reported on your personal return, and then you pay your taxes based on your personal tax rate. So that's different than like a C corporation. That's a separate return, and that business pays its own income tax. The only tax that comes to your tax return in a C corp situation is if you get paid dividends from that business or if you get a W-2 from that. So, but with the S corp, or if you happen to be a part of a partnership, I've seen some bands, be in a partnership before. The partnership also runs on those same due dates that we just talked about. And then that profit, your share of the partnership's profit, flows through to your personal return where you pay tax on it. The S corps, like we talked about, they are a tax advantaged option. So, run the numbers with your accountant to see if that is a good fit. It is more work. There's an extra tax return. You have to have payroll set up. So you want to make sure that your expenses are below the tax savings. You want some more tax savings left over after you've incurred these additional expenses. So it's, stuff you'll need to weigh out.
And is that something, if let's say a client, was interested in coming to your firm, is that something that you could help assess for a client, saying, I'm thinking of doing this. Can I share my numbers? And can you tell me, is this going to be in my financial interest? Is it going to be more expensive, less expensive? Is that something you could help people with?
Yeah, so we have an S Corp package for basically the setup of it, but we start with doing a consulting call. So we only bill for the consulting call first so that we can walk through what would this change mean for you and your business and how you get paid. Then we talk about, here's what the potential expenses would be. And then we discuss like applying the tax savings to their specific situation and comparing that to the expenses. And then at the end of the call, we kind of reassess, like, how do you feel about it? Here's where you stand. You know, if tax savings is a lot higher than expenses, pretty much most people will want to move forward with it. But we confirm that before moving on to the rest of the package, which is, you know, really digging into what is reasonable compensation for you and the type of job that you're doing. Taking care of setting up the payroll, because, you know, you can't just sign up for a payroll software. You have to register in your state a lot of times for withholding, unemployment, those types of things. And they're not, I don't know why they make those applications so weirdly worded, but it's not as straightforward when you get to that part of the payroll setup. So we assist with that as well, if they do decide to move forward.
Excellent. You know, can you talk about your firm a little bit? You have when I looked on your website, maybe we can put a picture from your homepage on your website up here. Can you talk a little bit? You have an unusual configuration of people that are in your firm. Can you talk a little bit about their locations and who they are and how you find people to work with?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a team of bookkeepers and accountants. We recently had an enrolled agent join us as well. So that is kind of like, it's different than the CPA designation, but they have just studied for tax related studies. And so that's how they get that designation. So we have a wide variety of experience. We have people in Texas, Arkansas, Idaho, Mississippi. I'm in Indiana. So we are all spread out and work with people all over the US. And, you know, being spread out and working with everybody, it does take a little bit of research on our end to be able to, you know, if a state has some new legislation in place, we have to keep our eye on that for our clients. So it does take a little bit of extra work on our end to be able to serve clients all over, but it's been really awesome to not only us be spread out, but just have clients all over.
It's a very unique, at least from what I've seen, a way to structure the business, and I think it benefits clients that you've got people in many different locations, that the office isn't just everybody's in the same place. I think that's a positive. So,
yeah, it's been really great.
Yeah, and I love that. We'll put the picture up one more time. I love the picture on your website that, you know, shows what doesn't look like a typical accounting mindset in terms of which is good, because I think a lot of people are either fearful or intimidated or bored or whatever with their accounting situation, and your firm certainly projects something very different than that.
Thank you. Yeah, we try to be kind of like, you know, when you're communicating with us, it's like you're communicating with your friend who happens to be really good at accounting. So that's kind of our goal in communication, is that kind of feeling.
That's fantastic. Well, I think this is really all we need to cover today. I had one last question here, and it's that if there's one thing that our audience should take away from this podcast, what would you say it would be, as if you had to just say one thing?
I would say don't procrastinate your numbers. Yeah, I've said it probably a couple times already. Don't put it off. The more you put it off, the more it builds stress on you. And it's just hard to do your best in other aspects of your life and your business when you have that kind of stress building.
It's good advice. I think all of us know that we're supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. And everybody is, myself included, it's like, where do I start this process? And maybe the right thing to do is to reach out to your CPA and ask that question. Say, okay, I'm going to take your advice, but I don't, what do I do? How do I start? It's way simpler than we think, but we just don't know what it is. So,
Right.
so well, okay, well, we're hoping everybody watching takes that to heart, and maybe it can make this upcoming tax season a little bit less stressful if they do take this advice. And Amy, we really appreciate you taking the time today to educate our audience and to share your firm and your philosophy with everybody. And we will put up on the screen all Amy's information, website and contact info if you'd like to contact Amy for consultation or any questions about how they might restructure what they're doing to be able to maximize your tax situation. We'll put that up on the screen now, and please feel free to reach out to Amy if you've got questions. So thanks again, Amy. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to getting my own taxes done here. And we will be in touch, and we just really appreciate you taking the time. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, take care. Yep. Well, that's it for today's broadcast with Amy Northard of Accountants for Creatives. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you'll come back for more. We've got some great guests lined up, and we'll be sure to let you know when the episodes are available. Thanks again for watching.